when it comes to my leadership style, it's really about who's the most knowledgeable here, who can advise us.
What I've seen a lot of is an attitude to failure. It's like a lot of women are scared. They feel the pressure. So that if you're working in tech as a woman, you feel a lot of pressure already. And then say you make a mistake. I feel like a lot of women are hard on themselves.
When we make a mistake, there's a lot of ego. We think, oh my God, what are people going to think? Are people going to think I'm not good at my job? So label it and say, this feeling is my ego. And slowly put it in the ego box. Stop the bleeding, right? So make sure that you recover as fast as possible and own up to it. There's no shame, right? Just say, yes, I made a mistake, but I'm working on fixing it.
I have a weekly planning 30 minutes with myself on Monday mornings where I'm looking out at the week and understanding what are the meetings that are happening.
What are the 3 words that I'd like people to think of me as I go?
What type of impact do I want to focus on that will be meaningful and be like something I'll look back on and be like, hey, yeah, I did that thing.
Be confident in what you bring. You don't need to match the environment to be successful.
Florence, Siddhi, welcome to the Vanessa Podcast. I'm really excited to have you both as my guests. And this episode is around women in tech. So yesterday, and we had you both at the Black Girls Tech Summit. So this was the 4th year that we partnered with Zalando to host the summit. And I wanted to find out, how did you find the summit? So this was the only summit that we've done this year in Berlin. So we had people like fly in from Barbados, US, London. The vibe was really good from our side, but how did you find it?
Yeah, I was able to pop in for lunch and just walking into the room and seeing this incredible energy. I think anytime you're in an environment like ours and you see so many women in one place all together, it's always like, yes, this is so great and so exciting. And there's a lot of just good conversation happening. You could really feel it.
Yeah, I agree. It was really buzzing. I had the chance to walk around and also gave a talk, and everybody was so engaged. It was wonderful.
Yeah,
Lots of energy.
Yeah, we really loved having you and excited to have you on the podcast. But before we kind of get into your careers, how would you both, I guess, introduce yourselves? So if we start with Siddhi, how would you explain to our listeners like who you are and what you do?
Yeah, definitely. So my role is the VP of cross-proposition experiences and content platforms. It's quite a big name. Yeah. But as a product manager, it's really about combining what is the business need, what is the need, the cost from an engineering perspective, and how do we create the most value together? So I feel like being a head of product, it's a really wonderful role where you're able to combine this creative part of your mind, the analytical part of your mind, and then also this comms part, which is also so important when you're a product leader in a big org, really explaining what are we doing, why are we doing it, what are the trade-offs, what are we not doing, and why is that important as well? So I think being that product lead is really that holding that space is how I describe myself. And then of course also as a mom, as a wife, as like so many other things as well, right? We all are so multifaceted. So
yeah, great.
So a bit similarly to what Siddhi said, I am the CISO of Zalando, so I lead the Information Security function. What it means is that we enable the business to do what they need to do in a safe and confident manner. And so we really work with every business unit. It's really a horizontal function, so it's extremely interesting, very varied. And apart from my job, I also have 2 daughters. I'm also married, so that also very much defines me.
That's great. And I'm really interested to kind of dig a little bit deeper into both what you do. Very fascinated by it. And one of the things I wanted to kind of start off to talk about was the move to Zalando, because you both had like really global careers, I guess, as in tech. But I guess Zalando is at the intersection of fashion and tech and so much more, like commerce. So what drew you to Zalando? If I start maybe with Florence and then go to Siddhi, what made you?
Yeah. So I think what really drew me to Zalando was the chance to transform the cybersecurity function in a very fast-paced and technology-driven environment. Don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed my role in my previous company. Great people, great opportunity, but I felt this was the right next step for me.
Yeah. And what about you, Siddhi?
Yeah, so previous to Zalando, I was at one of the big brands, a big sportswear brand. And with that, we got to see Zalando as one of these key customers that we had. And you could see how uniquely they operated. Very digital, very kind of data-driven, and just had this great reputation amongst the group of big customers. And then it's always about the people. So coming in and meeting the other leaders in product and tech were wonderful. And then also the job we had to do next from customer experience perspective, introducing inspiration and entertainment. It's e-com is a very mature space, but then the idea of layering in this newness of how do we get people to really be inspired, and how do we get them to discover differently the problem itself to solve was just very interesting. So those three combined, and it was a fit.
You're here.
Yeah.
And in terms of, I guess, what have you both learned actually from sort of having such different experiences and sort of like working in different countries, having a global career? What have been some of the, I guess, lessons that you've learned that you've kind of brought to your role at Zalando in terms of that aspect? What would you say?
For me, so I started my career in California, and then I moved to Berlin, and then I moved back to California and back again. And being back and forth and also working in global companies, I think when I was in California, you really feel it's an echo chamber. You say things and it's like, we all agree, obviously, right? I mean, of course, about things about politics or how to solve a problem or anything, right? You just feel like, of course, this is what we think. And then you come to places that are so much more truly like diverse, and you think, oh, those things that I thought were a given are absolutely not a given. You really need to adjust for a different person's experience or perspective in a completely different way than I did before. And I think also just the global scale. So for me, when I moved to Germany is when I started working at these more global, bigger companies. And you realize like it's hard to move things at a big company, but when you do, you're making such a big impact, right? In California, I worked at smaller companies. So I think also that scale topic was also a big new learning for me, tied into the geography part.
For me, I grew up in France and then lived in the US, and I've been living in the Netherlands for 20 years. And I've worked for small companies, in startups, but also for very large companies. And I think that what it's taught me overall is being flexible and adaptable also in my leadership, right? So I learned to really adapt to the context, to the different style of people. And I think it's a real strength. I would really encourage anybody to have different experiences.
Yes, I'm always saying that to, especially the women in our community, that if you can get any experience working in a different environment, in a different country, or even sort of going cross-sector to do it, I'm always trying to champion that, because I think it's one, exciting, but as you've both described, you get so much skills that you can that bring a lot of value to like new opportunities. So it's great to hear your perspectives. I think one of the areas that I wanted to touch on, I guess from Florence, from your perspective, was around cybersecurity. That it's such a big remit, right? And quite complex. And how have you been able to kind of like sort of like drive that in such a big place like Zalando and other companies that you've worked in, like, from sort of senior level all the way sort of across the organization? Because I'm really interested in it, but there's so many different facets. So how do you sort of like break down complex information, educate people, etc. in that space?
So it's interesting because there are some misconceptions that security is all about technology. Yeah. And it is about technology, but it's just as much about people and culture. And so our role as cybersecurity experts is to, as I said earlier, enable the business. And it means articulating risks and opportunities in a way that our stakeholder understands. And so for me, it's really the main part of our job, right, is being able to articulate so that our stakeholders can make decisions that are fully informed.
I see. Okay. Sort of like empowering people, so with the information for them to kind of like do their jobs.
That's right, because for security, we can always support, right? I always say we should be the ministry of how, not the ministry of no.
Yes.
But it's a question of making sure that our management board, for example, makes informed decisions and have all of the pieces of data that they need in order to do so.
Okay, and that's all down to how you communicate. That's so interesting, actually, that you said that, because I kind of assumed that it was very much more technical, but I loved how you sort of like added that narrative in that, in terms of being able to communicate risks and challenges. And what about you, Siddhi? I think what's really interesting about your bio, I wanted to touch on how you worked in a startup as a co-founder in, I guess, an entrepreneurial space. Could you talk about that experience, and then have you brought anything from that side to Zalando in your
Yeah,
role here?
definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I still see myself as very much like a small company person, right? I
Okay,
really,
yeah.
before my last two roles, I always worked at companies that were like 50 or smaller. And I think there's a few things that just come with that. I think one of them is really um, kind of being a bit more of a risk taker, which is so funny to be sitting
Okay,
here.
yes.
Florence.
Florence is
But,
watching.
you know, but I really feel like, you know, oftentimes the cost of not taking a decision is so high, and people wait for the perfect decision. And when you're at a small company, you realize like there's so few decisions that actually are not reversible. There's actually so few, and it makes sense to just kind of make the decision and see what happens. And also, oftentimes the people who are closest to the decision, who can make the best decision, are not the most senior, right? So also when it comes to my leadership style, it's really about who's the most knowledgeable here, who can advise us, what's the recommendation, and really allowing those people to kind of move forward and have a voice and have space. And another thing is the power of small teams, right? I think having a small, smart, dedicated team is so valuable, and it's so much bigger. Oftentimes in big companies, I see this norm of more, 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 more. And I still feel myself sometimes a bit of an outsider to big companies because I've grown up in smaller companies. And I think that this idea of like, what's the most I can do with this small team, because it's easier. It's easier to move. It's easier to make decisions. It's easier to have progress, right? So I think this idea of kind of like making decisions, having speed, moving forward is really important to me. And it's core to my team and to my leadership.
And that's interesting because there have been women who've actually worked in, say, big tech companies that I know. So, like women that have been actually in senior leadership. And then they kind of would take maybe a role at maybe like a scale up, so like a smaller company. And they've struggled a lot. Like I've seen a pattern where they struggle to kind of adapt when you're working in a big company and you've got all the systems and there's a lot of process, procedure, like you said, large teams. And then they're going to maybe a scale up where they want the person's expertise, right, but they haven't got all of that infrastructure. Yeah. So what would be your advice to somebody who might be watching and thinking, okay, I might be sort of thinking about moving to a scale up, so maybe a company that's got potential. Yeah. How could they best adapt?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that your room for making decisions is so much wider than you think. Like I think it's like you have to trust yourself to say, I know enough. I know, and not having hubris, right? Like it's that fine line of understanding, okay, what do I need to decide here that I really need to wait on? It's also, I guess, deciding what to decide at the right time,
Yeah.
And then also having your experts that you trust, and they may not always be the most senior people, but another thing too is like this comfort with doing not the wrong thing, having a failure,
yes,
right?
yeah.
Or comfort with your team maybe making a decision that wasn't perfect, right? And okay, how do you have the confidence to roll with that and say, we're going to figure it out. It's going to be fine. Let's keep moving forward and figuring it out. So I think that getting comfortable in that gray space of not having perfect information, moving forward and knowing you'll be able to like recover, I think is important. And the truth is, in a startup, you have no other choice. You have to decide. You have to keep moving.
Yeah.
You're going to run out of money, or you're going to run out of funding, and
exactly.
so you don't have the luxury of not deciding sometimes. So I think just moving forward.
And you touched on failure, so I kind of want to bring Florence in. Like because we all make mistakes, right, in work and life, and this is just, I'm talking from a perspective of the women in tech community that we have and the trends that we're seeing, so we can learn from you. And a lot of what I've seen a lot of is an attitude to failure. It's like a lot of women are scared they feel the pressure. So that if you're working in tech as a woman, you feel a lot of pressure already. And then say you make a mistake or you've failed at something. I feel like a lot of women are hard on themselves, right? And I wondered, how do you deal with when you make mistakes, high level, like say a high level mistake? How do you deal with that? How do you deal with it? Like, I guess, what is your thought process in terms of, right, this has happened. How do you kind of work through that, I guess, operationally? And then like personally, how do you kind of like deal with that internally? So it's like two parts.
So I also worked in startups for 10 years. I ran branches of information security consulting companies. And I've seen this side as well that you mentioned of acting fast, making decisions. And so, yes, I did make mistakes as well. And looking back, I do see that even though it wasn't pleasant, I learned something and it brought me something. It helped me get to the next step. Now, to answer your question about my reaction when I make a mistake, the first thing I do is more personal, and it was a piece of advice that was given to me a long time ago. Recognize what part is the ego part. So when we make a mistake, there's a lot of ego. We think, oh my God, what are people going to think? Are people going to think I'm not good at my job? And so label it and say, this feeling is my ego. And slowly put it in the ego box. It's not immediate, but if you do it enough, it's actually quite helpful. And then you're left with what really matters. And with what really matters, you may start thinking, okay, so what do I need to do next time? What can I learn from this? And really keep on repeating to yourself, it's okay. Next time I won't make the same mistake, and I'll just recognize that new scenario, right? So it's all about integrating it for next time. From an operational perspective, I mean, it's very dependent on the role. But for me, it's all about a bit similar to a security incident, stop the bleeding, right? So make sure that you recover as fast as possible and own up to it. There's no shame, right? Just say, yes, I made a mistake, but I'm working on fixing it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that perspective. I want to talk about a high pressure environment. So you both are busy, even like just, I guess, prepping, just saying you've got really sort of high demands, right? And pressure is quite sort of like intense. How do you I know this question can sometimes be asked quite a lot, right? How do you work in high pressure environments? But I guess like, how do you manage and juggle everything? Like, is there some kind of like thought process, or what do you implement to make sure that you can kind of like show up as your best self when there's just so much going on? If we start with Siddhi, like what would be your kind of, I guess, tips and advice?
Yeah. So I think that there's a proactive part and a reactive part. Right? The proactive part is starting your weeks with a period of time for yourself to understand what your priorities are. I have a weekly planning 30 minutes with myself Monday mornings, where I'm looking out at the week and understanding what are the meetings that are happening, where do I need to prep, where do I need to set some things in action, what are the priorities that I need to share with my team. So I think there's this really proactive part. And then there's a reactive of incoming, right? Incoming things of, things didn't go the right way, or there's new things added. I think when you've done the proactive, reactive is easier, right? Because you're like, okay, it's not, there's a foundation that's known, and then there's a bit on top that you're managing. And then I think then there's also a bit of like the emotional part, right? Of like, how do you manage when you're feeling in your body, you're stressed, right? And I grew up with doing a lot of meditation and a lot of these kind of deep breathing type things. I feel like these simple and ancient things are also so helpful, and also working out, right? There's some just like things of like taking care of your body and self that really help you show up and be your best self at work as well. As the busy people that we are, I think oftentimes it's very easy to deprioritize yourself, but I think that also having some time where you're able to focus on things like working out, getting enough steps in the day. I often take calls where I can on my phone and walk around like my team will tell you, right? Because these little micro adjustments through the day help you also kind of regulate and take care of yourself as you're going through it. So.
I have similar routines, working out, taking calls while I walk as well. I call it the walk and talk with my team. And so I fully agree on the proactive and reactive portions as well. There's one more thing that I do every morning when I wake up. I think, okay, given what my day is like, what are the 3 words that I'd like people to think of me as I go? And so, sometimes it may be calm, strong, eloquent. Other times it's something else. And so I try to repeat those words to myself throughout the day, thinking,
I love that.
Okay, those are my words.
Yeah. I might steal that actually. That's a good thing, yeah. I want to kind of talk about, I guess, the future of your areas. So if we start with like you, Siddhi, in terms of just like the scope of your work, because it's around, from my understanding, around, I guess it's really sort of multifaceted in terms of how users interact with the platform, product. What do you see, or what are you excited about in terms of the opportunities, right? Say in the next 5 years for your space at Zalando, or even as an industry. What are you sort of really looking forward to, and what do you think is coming up?
Yeah. So, as I mentioned earlier, like e-com is such a mature space, but our needs, our expectations are ever evolving, which is so fun, right? And I think that fashion is also a great way of self-expression, and it's a great way of putting things together, but it's also very practical. As a mom, I need things for my kids, right? So how do you capture all of these variety of needs and wants and in different ways? So, I mean, I think that there's lots of space for innovation. There are things around how we collect and share our ideas with others. We're exploring some of that with our boards product, which is really a fun one. I think there's lots of ways that visualization is changing. So how do we give people a better understanding of the feeling of products when they're buying things digitally? How do we give them authenticity? So really connecting with creators, the right messages, giving them trust as they're evaluating their decision-making process. I think there's a lot there. And then there's whole other spaces which are big disruptors. How do we think about agentic commerce? How do we think about, especially as Zalando as a platform, how do we think about how we influence those purchase journeys that may be happening elsewhere differently than we expected? The space of influence is also changing, and thinking about platforms that are way more socially driven, right? Like social commerce is evolving quite a lot. So how do we show up in those ways with buyers who are really used to shopping in ways like live streaming or other ways that are much more interactive? So there's just so many areas of exploration and so much newness. So it's a lot to explore. Yeah.
Yeah. What about yourself in your space in cybersecurity? What do you see?
So I started in cybersecurity 25 years ago when this was not a known field at all. And I didn't think that it would evolve the way it has, that all of a sudden everybody would know about it, that movies would be made about cybersecurity. And I think it's because as we go with all of the new technologies that are coming up, we see that cybersecurity is really a key component of being able to use them safely. And so for me, what's exciting me is just being able to adapt again and again to new technologies, to new innovation. Right now, we're talking about AI, about agentic as well. And so it's a new phase. Yeah. It's really exciting.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I guess I want to kind of, the time has gone actually so quick. So I kind of want to, I guess, talk about, some personal reflections, right? And I wanted to ask you, what does success look like for both of you beyond your job titles? What would you say?
I think as I've gotten more mature in my career, for me, it's really not about growth. I think it's more about impact in a way. I want to have a great team. I want to be able to grow people in my team. That's so rewarding. And I think it's also outside of work as well, right? Thinking about impact also. My kids are 8 and 10. So how do I show them, and also show them by modeling kind of the behavior I want to have, working hard professionally, being connected to things, and then also show up in the moments with them, right? So it's both kind of being present for them in the moment, but then also through modeling the behavior and the life that I think creates a holistic kind of happy life, right? So I think it's, for me, much more about shifting. I guess I'm in this kind of phase where it's shifting a bit more from what's that personal growth and achievement towards what's that movement towards impact, towards other people, topics, things that I care about. And I think that's kind of what I'm thinking about a lot for the next 5 years. What type of impact do I want to focus on that will be meaningful and be really something I'll look back on and be like, hey, yeah, I did that thing, So yeah.
Good. What about yourself, Florence?
So overall, when I'm asked what success looks like, I always give the example of my older daughter who just started her 3rd year at uni in the UK, and who wants to come home as much as possible, who wants to go on holidays with us. And so for me, probably the definition of true success is when your kids moved away and they still want to hang out with you.
I was going to say,
100%.
I must be the
so-
opposite.
Absolutely.
So,
That's so cool.
yeah, really excited. I hope my younger daughter, who's just as wonderful, will also feel the same. Professionally, it's similar. I mean, I've always juggled, being a mother, working hard, having a great husband, taking care of my friends, of my family, and I want to show my daughters that it's possible, that we can do it all, and we need to be careful not to put too much pressure on ourselves, but that it's possible. Work-wise, for me, if I really dive deep, it's all about people. So if my team wakes up in the morning and they're happy to go to work because they like the challenge that we're all working on, then that's success.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And you touched on something that I guess I wanted to kind of talk about, was around the people that are coming up, right? And there might be some women who are watching this and they've worked really hard and they're passionate about their careers in tech. They're maybe sort of like at mid-level management, right? And they kind of think, like, the next goal, I want to be a director or a VP. But it feels like it's just like, how do you get to that next step? A broad question, but what would you say to someone that would ask you, that not that they're frustrated, but they feel like, I'm doing everything, I'm working really hard, but I just can't get to that next level. What would you say to them in terms of, okay, try and do this one thing that can help you get there? What would you say?
Oh, how much time do we have? I feel like there's so much I want to
much,
talk
yeah.
to you about, like share about how to be a woman in this world that's so challenging, sometimes, but also learn so much over time, I think that there's in the professional side, there's a few things I would say is like, you should really try to be known for one thing, known for something, right? So people always say build your brand. What does that mean? For me, that means people have a problem and this person knows how to solve that problem really well, right? So building kind of this reputation around, either a certain knowledge area or a certain way of working, I think is one thing. Being known for something, I think, is definitely one. Another one in the professional space is to have a broad set of mentors. I think oftentimes it's really hard to create mentorship for women because oftentimes the more senior people are male. The pathways to mentorship are hard. It's not like you can go out to dinner with a man one-on-one without there being a whole blowback of other types of, right? So you have to find that mentorship opportunity carefully, and often it's not about like asking someone to be a mentor, but truly creating a personal connection. It's so hard to do anyways. And then what's important is actually to do it with multiple people. You don't want to have the one person who you've invested so much when they leave, right? You want to have multiple people who can speak up for you in a room and can really say, hey, you had that experience, I've had a similar one, right? So having this broad base of mentors. On the personal side, I think also this mid-tier is interesting because it's often the time that women also start having a family or thinking about other goals. A few things that have helped me a lot on the personal side. Number one, this is a thing that Sheryl Sandberg said, 15 years ago, make your partner a real partner. This I see so often. Women are the first line of defense. A child gets sick, something happens, and it's often in a partnership, the woman who's that first line for everything, right? And I think that's really hard because this might be too long of an answer.
No, I love that. We're getting some gems.
Yeah,
Yes,
because
continue.
oftentimes I find, because of societal norms, women marry men who are slightly older. So you have two people that are in the same tier, and you have a woman and a man in the same level. And what you don't see is at home, the man peer has a personal support network that's huge and supporting, because inevitably, economically, that trade-off, right? It's more valuable for the man to kind of move forward because of this age thing, right? And when you see it repeated again and again and again, it's really challenging because so that's why, despite of seniority or income, you need to make your partner a real partner, share responsibilities at home as equally as possible. And women need to resource themselves at home. If you want to grow a company, you go get venture funding. If you want to grow your career, you go get the support you need. Get an au pair, get help. Don't be the first line of defense every single time, right? So that you can show up the way that your peer set is showing up as well, right? So those are some things that I feel really I always want to share with people who are in that stage of kind of starting to grow and balance and change them.
Yes. Get the
I
resources.
love that.
Get the resources.
Fully agree with that. Maybe a couple of things that I would add. The first is know what you bring, and be confident in what you bring. You don't need to match the environment to be successful, and you can just bring your own expertise to the table. The second probably would be around the mentors, the mentorship that you mentioned. So I think building that strong network of mentors, of sponsors outside of the company as well is really important because they can support you when needed. You can also support them when needed. Another one would be to take risks. I've took many risks in my career, and that's okay. And I think it's okay to be bold. We have one life. We might as well try things. And maybe one last, whatever you do, be authentic. I love the words of Oscar Wilde, right? Be yourself, everyone else is already taken. And I think it's true. Yeah. Just continue to be yourself, be authentic, and thrive.
Thank you. So many gems and so little time, but thank you both. But we usually end the podcast with a little fun kind of quick fire round. So it's kind of like you have to choose either or, and then say the first one that comes to your mind. So the first question I have for you is, would you choose coffee or herbal tea to start the day?
Coffee.
Yeah. Okay. I'm a coffee girl too as well. Are you an early adopter or cautious tester when it comes to new tech?
I'm an early adopter, I would say. Yeah.
Me and both. Early adopter, but in a sandbox, right?
So I see what you mean. Yeah. You've got to be cautious to make sure you're not going down the wrong path. I get you.
And I think it also depends, like personally or professionally. Like, like personally, like you can try all the things. At work, okay, let's be a little. I have to say this sitting next to you.
Yeah.
No, I don't.
Cautious tester. Okay, what is the favorite app that you can't live without?
Oh gosh, I love the New York Times. I know it's such a basic one, but I think they've done such a great job of evolving, making it personal, just great news quality. I think this is not rapid anymore, isn't it? I'm talking too much.
No, but it's good because we can get to know you a bit more. Yes.
I mean, the source of content, it's so hard to tell now what's real. I love this really high quality journalism. So that's one.
So many, but probably WhatsApp because that's what my parents use. And so I'm in touch with them. They live in France, and also I have many friends abroad. So definitely that.
WhatsApp. And then what's the best piece of career advice you've ever been given? We'll go with you first, Siddhi.
I think it might be one of the things I repeated earlier, which are essentially find a broad set of mentors. I think that's something that I was told in my last company as I watched a mentor leave, right? And they're like, oh, you did that one wrong. And I think that's a really important one, and one that's not so intuitive.
For me, it would be to ask myself the question, what's the worst that can happen when taking a risk? Because it turns out the worst is often not that bad.
Yeah.
And finally, which one woman in tech inspires you?
So there's a woman, Fiji Simo. She was at Facebook. She was kind of that very young head of app, and then she went over to Instacart. Now she's at OpenAI. I think she's amazing because she's a business mind who's led product teams for so long, is so young, and is still so powerful, and also manages a really seemingly like a very holistic life as well. So that would be one woman. Yeah.
So me, it would probably have to be Geneviève Grotian. She was a U.S. citizen, and she was key in deciphering the purple machine during World War II. And so massive impact. It's still one of the biggest US code-breaking examples to date.
Thank you both for being wonderful guests on the Vanessa Podcast. Hope you enjoyed yourselves.
Thank you for having me.
Lovely. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.